Welcome to the Apartment Operators Podcast, where you can learn from experienced operators what it really means to be an apartment operator. No fluff, no sugarcoating, just the raw, unfiltered truth of the ups and downs of operating multifamily communities.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Operators Podcast. My name is Joseph Goslan, I'm your host, and today we have a very special guest, Jason Perot. Jason, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Joseph. Happy to be here.
Awesome. Well, Jason is one of the most awesome operators I know. He's got a lot of units under his belt, and he self-manages, and he's doing everything. He's a one-man empire, really, and he's going to tell us all about it. Give us a few minutes, a little bit about you, what you're doing, how your organization look like, just so the audience will get a feel for who you are.
Okay. Started buying property in 2001. Was graduated college in 1999, started working, started buying rental property, bought my first duplex in 01. Next year, my wife and I, we bought a duplex and a quad. And then the year after that, we just kept building it the old fashioned way, just saving up one person's income, living off the other, and just putting down payments on smaller real estate, just trying to build up a little bit of cash flow. During that time, I worked as a medical device sales rep, at which time in 2012, I was able to leave that job. I had about 290 units at that time, just my wife and I, no partners. And since that time, we've grown to about 900 units today. 600 of those units, my wife Nadia and I own just ourselves, no partners, just 100% her and I. And then we've syndicated 300 units. So we've done 2 syndications over the last year, an 86 unit and a 205 unit. Both went really, really well. And that's where we are today. And we still self-manage, everything in-house, and all in the Erie, Pennsylvania, Northwest Pennsylvania geographic area.
And how many people are in that town, just so everybody will get an idea?
Sure. So the city of Erie is 100,000 people, but the greater metro area, so all the suburbs and everything, is about 350,000 people.
Okay. So you're not in a huge metroplex, and you were still able to accumulate a very significant amount of units. I'm going to imitate Mark Cuban from Shark Tank for a second and just do this.
Really, thanks.
You guys deserve every bit of it. Getting to hundreds of units all by yourselves without any partners is incredibly impressive. And then you also the syndication aspect to your business, that is really impressive. So let's just jump straight into it. 900 units. How does your organization look like? How many people do you have? Do you self-manage? Do you use a third party? Tell us a little bit.
Yep. So we self-manage. And that was probably the hardest part of leaving my day job and still growing the business and creating a company. So I think it's really easy to buy rental properties, whether you buy a single family home or a 500 unit complex, but to actually operate it and hire people and build a team, that was the hard part for me. So I feel like we finally have it right. So I have a main property manager who also is an acting asset manager. He oversees a junior property leasing agent property manager for about approximately 600 units. And he and this individual handle all of the leasing, and then he oversees our site managers. So I have about 120 unit portfolio in a small town south of Erie. It's a small college town called Edinburgh, Pennsylvania. So we have a branch office down there where we have a property manager, an office manager, and then a maintenance personnel. So we have it's a really I've really learned that you have to staff properly. So I have a full-time accountant on staff. We also have my CPA who I work with very closely that is not on payroll, but part of the team. So we, make sure all of our taxes and financial documents are in line at the end of the year. Hired an office manager that really is invaluable. I mean, she keeps everything moving from, helping the property manager, the maintenance guys, keeping inspections on schedule and on task. So that was probably one of the best hires I've made, just because she's kind of the glue. She's the organizer of everything, because there's so much going on at once. But we have, like I said, we have site managers at our larger properties, but then, in-house property managers that manage the site managers and kind of the overall leasing part of the business. So they work closely with our maintenance manager and maintenance team. And so we will subcontract certain things out, but I've found it's way more cost effective to hire a guy on payroll that, say, is a great at flooring, or hire a guy full-time who's a wizard with drywall repair and painting. And if you can keep these guys full and keep their schedules full, just better to continually have work for them. And we just go a lot further. That was our biggest challenge, is finding the quality work, the guys that actually want to show up, be part of a growing company. And that's probably content for a whole other conversation, but really learning how to attract quality people, but also keep quality people and help them grow and achieve their goals. And so we have a whole maintenance staff, and we, even from like our bottom entry level guys that might go out and cut grass and clean out vacant apartments and things like that, we try to attract people that have a growth mindset. So, maybe they come in and they're at $10 an hour and they're cutting grass and they're, doing this menial work. But if they, maybe they're not highly educated, but they want to come in and learn a trade, they can learn and apprentice under some of our senior guys, and over a period of time can really elevate their career and have some nice benchmarks for them to be able to, up their income, maybe get some more benefits, through the company and things like that. So we try to plot a plan for their future so that as I grow, these guys can grow, and then we can hopefully promote from within. And that's how we sort of have this, now this guy who's rolling into the asset management mode, because we're getting to that unit count where we really need to manage our managers. And that's been me, all these years. And so my time's getting pulled in all these directions. So I've really started to think about my next steps and what does that look like, and who do I need to either promote from within or attract from the outside to come in the organization to, to kind of help fill that role. Because it ultimately, when it started out, just my wife and I, we did it all ourselves. And so we've learned that, we really need to hire people that are better than that can do these things better than I can. But that also frees us up for the growth, the growth part of the business.
Oh yeah, we're so gonna dig into that one. But first, I want to ask a little bit about the beginning, right?
Okay.
So, did you always self-manage, or did you have third party at some point? A lot of our people that we talk to in operations, there's the ones that believe in third party management. There's the ones that believe in self-management. There's the people that have gone through the transition. But where did you start? What was the thought process behind, do I get a third party or do I self-manage?
So when we started out, the people that I was buying property from and people that mentored me, they all self-managed. I didn't really know any different. So I bought a duplex, and I was buying it for cash flow. So I didn't think any differently, like, hey, I'm going to go hire somebody to run this for me. So unfortunately, like when things would break, I'm not handy at all. I'm still not handy. So I learned who to call, who to delegate certain tasks to. But, my wife Nadia and I would go and paint the apartment. We would clean it out. We would get it ready for rent, and we would advertise the rental and then, lease the property up. So that's how we did it the first, say, 4 years in the business. 2005, I was at 23 units. And then we acquired a 56 unit portfolio from a guy who was my first real business mentor in the real estate business. And he had built up at the time what I thought was an amazing portfolio, 128 units. I ended up buying all of that from him over the years, but I was so impressed with this guy, and he ran such an awesome business, taught me a ton. And I said, wow, I can do that. But I also had a full-time job that was really demanding, and my son was born in 2005. So going from like 23 to 79 units, I was able to hire in the maintenance guy that worked for my mentor. And then what I found over a period of months was that there was a tenant that she was retired, long retired, but had experience in property management. And I said, well, great. She's looking for a part-time job. I can have her start showing apartments. And when they started taking all these tasks off of my plate, I said, oh, wow, now I have more time to go buy more property, and I have time to, dedicate to my job to make more money to buy more property. So I didn't really know any different. I had a third party company call me at one time, and this is, 13, 14, 15 years ago. And they said, hey, would you be interested in us managing your property? And they wanted 10%. I said, man, that's my profit. I can't give up 10%. So I just stuck with self-managing. And I thought there was a big need, at least in our market, for a quality third-party management company. Sounds like that's in most markets, that it's really hard to find, good property management companies. And kind of dabbled in it, but it was, D-class properties, stuff that was really hard to manage, and owners that really don't want to pony up the money to put into the put the work into the properties that was needed.
Mm-hmm.
So I quickly got out of that. I dabbled in that for a few years, and it just, I felt like any money we made just, like wasn't worth the headache and heartache. So
The brain damage, man.
yeah,
The brain damage. It's not worth it.
no, but we've evolved our portfolio. So we did have a lot of, smaller properties. But I've ended up selling off a lot of those and really transitioned into the bigger property. But even at that, I found that it's, and again, not that I'm the best at or anything like that, but I think when the owner's involved, one of the things that I learned from one of my first real mentor in the business, his name was Dick. Dick had said to me that no one ever takes as good a care of it as the owner, and that's whether that's true or not. Some third-party companies would probably debate that, but what I thought was that if I have my touch on the business, whether that's just managing the manager or providing my input, that I'm going to get ultimately what I want out of the properties, which is something that's attractive to own. It's well managed, well run. We treat our customers fairly, treat our employees fairly. And then, look, if kind of the stuff hits the fan, then I can roll my sleeves up. And not that has to happen a lot, but I know that I'm willing to jump in and do whatever's needed, especially now that we have passive investors in our deal and our syndication deals. They need to know that I'm out there raising money, but I'm also kind of running the show with the company. And I think, and that's not for everybody, but I think that is a nice selling point, especially in a small market, to know that the owner is involved in the day-to-day operations. And that, again, that's, for me, it's at a high level. I'm not showing apartments anymore. I'm not doing a lot of that basic work, but I'm working with our managers and kind of have, our folks who have the boots on the ground to give my input and direction on how I want to see things go.
Yeah. And that's something I learned is true for any kind of business. It's not just property management, right? Even if you own a shoe store, if you're going to sit down thousands of miles away, it's not going to operate as well as you being there and visiting and guiding the people on site. So I get that totally. So how do you develop the skill to manage hundreds and hundreds of units, right? So you mentioned earlier, one of the common challenges that all property management companies have, whether they're just a person that manages their own units or it's a third party, they all have hiring challenges, right? Hiring the right people, what I learned is a key in this business. And if you don't have the right people, it doesn't matter what the size of the property management and what infrastructure they have and what technology they have installed. If the on-site people, the maintenance, the managers, they're not the right people,
right?
It's just not going to work. So I do want, you mentioned earlier that that's a whole topic for another conversation, but let's make it a topic in this conversation, because I think it's super critical on the operations side. And it doesn't matter if you self-manage or if you have a third party, how to pick the right people is super critical. So I'd love to hear your insights about that.
Sure. And honestly, that's something that I think I struggled with for so long. I would be so happy that I had an employee, and that made me feel good. Whether they were effective or they were an A player was a different story. And it became something that I think I had to work on myself to be a better leader. And I don't know what that really looks like, but I know that I'm, to be an authority in the business. I'm president of our local REIA. I've done this all myself, so I know what I'm doing. But I found that oftentimes I put an advertisement out there. We try to hire somebody, and they'd want to come in and we're, you own this many units. We'd love to work for you. And then you put them on the job, and 3, 4, 5 months later, you find out that, they're a drunk, or they're sleeping on the job, or they're just not putting the product out there that you want. And I just had a shift in mindset a couple of years ago, probably around the time that we met. Um, I started thinking about, is it skills or mind? Like what's teachable? And I feel like you can teach somebody how to lay carpet. You can teach somebody how to paint a wall the way you want it done, but it's really hard to teach mindset. Like you can lead people in personal development and growth, but to have a growth mindset, people kind of have to come to that on their own. So I really started focusing on hiring people and attracting people that have like a growth mindset and a positive attitude. I will not hire anybody that's like a Debbie Downer. Oh, it's people that see the negative. I want problem solvers. I don't want excuse makers. And so, like as an example, in our most recent syndication, it was a 205 unit complex. The site manager, she was there for 13, 14 years. And, they consistently were at 90% occupancy, but they weren't advertising properly online. She was very much comfortable being the queen bee on the job, but not really trying to make the property run as efficiently as possible. And so I knew I was going to have to replace her. I knew it wasn't going to be a fit for my personality, because she had her ways of doing things and she wasn't open to change. And for me, it's not that my right. And it's not that my way is the only way. I mean, I'm constantly changing how we do things to adapt and grow and better our process. So I knew there was going to be some conflict, that if they're not willing to change, I don't really want them on my team. And again, not changing to the way I want doing things, just being continually open to growth and learning new things. So we ended up hiring, and she was probably the fastest or quickest study I've seen in this business from my own experience. But she was a nanny for 23 years. Our kids had gone to school together, and she had left that job at the end of the school year, which is about a month. We closed on the property on June 28th, and the light bulb went off. I said, my gosh, she's dealt with so she had triplets, and there's 4 children right now, and then she had these older kids. So, oh my gosh, she dealt with, and the kids are really sweet. I know them, and so I'm not, but that's hard. I mean, that's a lot of, they're 6th graders now, and the other one's a 5th grader. So this girl, the ex nanny was, leaving her house at 4:35 in the morning, going and getting these kids ready for school, going home and picking up her own daughter, and just solving problems, and she's managing these other kids' lives and her own daughter's life, always with a smile, always with a positive attitude. The parents that she nannied for were probably a little bit difficult to deal with. And I saw that, property management is just a people business, and it's about solving problems. I mean, I always tell people, you're not, you might be their landlord, but you're also going to be their financial counselor, their marriage counselor, their life coach, their business coach, all these hats that you wear as a property manager. And so she had that mindset. And so my wife and I talked to her, told her about a possible, the possibility of a job, and really explained to her what it looked like, had her shadow one of my property managers for a couple of days to see if this is the type of job that she would, that she would, this would be a mutually beneficial thing. But she came in and learned the job so fast, because it's just systems and procedures. I mean, so we taught her the systems and the procedures, and that first couple of weeks she was a little unsure of herself, but now she's hustling. She's got the property damn near full, which is awesome, like way ahead of schedule. So I kind of knock on wood, I'm like, it worked out better than expected. But she was just an example of like hiring for the mindset, because she was growth oriented, wanted to grow as a person, really just really good with people, and wants to learn new things. But if I did the opposite and had this person who was a stick in the mud, we'd still have a 10% vacancy rate and not really making any progress at the property. And that kind of goes like even on the maintenance side of things. We've hired guys that, they may not have a ton of skill, but you can tell they're quick learners, they're mechanically inclined. And so we'll let them apprentice alongside one of our flooring installers, or we'll let them apprentice with our painting team. And then, over a few years, they can get some nice raises, and they can kind of come into their own to where they have more responsibility. So I've really focused on that. I don't know that that's the be all end all answer. And I'm sure, the next acquisitions will pose new hiring and firing problems, but that's sort of where we've evolved to today, as far as like the type of people we try to attract, which makes my life easier so I can focus on growing the company and not, not just getting mad at people not doing doing the apartment turns properly, or not dealing with customers properly. So I just found that, empowering them, but also, getting those types that are growth oriented, because they're going to be self-led and self-managed more so than having to like just give them like, fire out punch lists every day. That's like miserable for everybody. So
Yeah, I know. I didn't think about that before, but a nanny is basically very similar to a property manager, right? Because you got to be the mom, you got to be
yeah,
kind, but you got to be firm, right? Same
yeah,
thing with
yeah,
kids. It kind of it's very transferable kind of
yeah,
skill set. I didn't even think that, but I totally agree with you about hiring for talent and teaching skill,
yeah,
because I can see the difference between a property where we have a lead maintenance guy that walks around smiling
yeah,
and communicates with the residents, and the residents love him, and he's joking around with them in between, and he's got that mentality of, I'm here to work and contribute
yeah,
and take care of my residents, versus the people that just come to punch the clock, the
right,
people that are walking around with a mopey face around.
yeah,
It's the attitude is a huge factor in all these things. But I do have to give it to you. It's a pretty big gamble to take a person that from outside the industry and give them 205 unit
yeah,
profit,
oh yeah, yeah.
right? So what did you do to kind of hedge that bet?
So her daughter and my son went to elementary and middle school together. So we knew her and her husband, fairly well from school events and things like that. Um, explained to her the job and said, look, this is a two-way street. I mean, my risk, you might be a month into the job and miss nannying so much that, you know what, you go back and do it for somebody else, or you leave the job. But what we did is, we made sure that we had one of our senior property managers spend the first couple weeks on the job upon closing the acquisition on site with her. And so she always had somebody there to support her and teach her the ropes. Um, but I knew that, buying that property, we were going to replace the site manager anyways. And I know, I mean, in my mind, I'm thinking, well, like, how bad can it get? I mean, if we went from like 10, like, it could get really
Yeah,
bad, but
it
I
could
mean,
get really bad.
but they're at 10% vacancy rate, and I knew that the old property manager and maintenance manager didn't get along too well, and I spent a lot of time sort of vetting the different employees that we were going to hire and the ones that we were going to let go from the old business. So this individual, Tammy, so she came on, and I thought, well, yeah, it is a risk, but I had faith that she would be able to do the job, and I personally spent a lot of time with her as well. I would show up every day on, for the first week or two. Now I check in with her every couple of days. We have phone conversations, and she's still working with, my asset manager spends a morning a week with her. And just to kind of really get her up to speed, he goes to eviction hearings with her. He's giving her that confidence, but she really, but we give her input and we give her a say. I mean, she feels as though she's a part of something bigger. So for our syndication, I have a co-sponsor on that, on these larger deals. So he and I and our CFO do a monthly meeting where we involve, the head maintenance guys and the property manager. We share the financials. We really give her input into, hey, tell us how things are going. We see how it's going financially, but give us your input. Let's try different things out. And I think that giving her that sort of that feeling that she of ownership in her job has gone a long way to kind of creating a happy environment for her. And we've let her experiment with things. We said, hey, I said, I'd love to do things for our tenants. What do you think? And she said, well, I'd love to try a game night. Can I buy some pizzas and do like board games? And we had like 20 residents show up. So 10% of the residents showed up for this game
That's
night
a nice
a few
turnout,
weeks
yeah.
ago. And it wasn't expensive. So it's not just us dictating how her job has to go. It's here's what we expect, but you can have a lot of fun with this and do things that you think are going to be great for your community. And she sort of embraced that. Now, look, if it didn't work, we both knew going in that there was that possibility that it wouldn't be a fit. And I think we're both lucky that it was a fit and that she loves it. But if it wasn't, we would have went back to the drawing board and figured out, how to attract somebody that was a better fit.
So do you have, you mentioned systems and processes. So do you have like manuals and everything that you hand over so she knows how to do, like you said, evictions and notices, fair housing rules? How do you
Yeah,
train that from someone that is completely new to the industry? Give us a little
yeah,
bit of, because again, it's a very high risk to
yeah,
bring someone from outside, but I also believe in finding the right talent, like we talked about. So for example, on larger property, when you have an assistant manager, that they're usually more logistic oriented,
yeah.
then I always advocate to find someone that has been an assistant manager of a big department store, like a JC
Oh yeah,
Penney or a
yeah,
Macy's, or one of these big ones, because these guys are phenomenal, right?
right.
They get things ticking, and they're the logistics person at the
Yeah, they're
store.
process oriented, right? So
Exactly. So
yeah,
so I believe in bringing people from outside the industry, but there's still that
yeah,
concern of how do you get them up to speed with
yeah.
the industry rules, regulations,
Yeah.
laws, and so on.
Well, and that's been a growth area for me. So, so the short answer is that it's a work in progress. So we, part of me hiring in my office manager slash business manager, I had hired her 8 years ago as assistant office manager for our local RIA that I'm now president of. And when I was vice president, I was in charge of personnel. And I always said if it didn't work out with our organization, that I would hire her in my personal business. And so that evolved, and about a year ago, she approached me and said, "Hey, I'm looking for a change of pace." So she's very has experience with property management before coming over to our RIA, and part of her job is creating the manual. So in the past, when my wife and I did it, and then we'd hire property managers, it was a lot of verbal training and on the job training. But I realized that's great, but how long do I want to continue to do that?
Yeah.
So we have all the forms, and we have our standard lease and our addendums and all these things. But really, what we what I've tasked, her name's Yvonne, is our office manager, um, creating the calendar in the manual that, okay, here's how each month should go from a workflow perspective. First through the fifth, rents are coming in. The sixth, check the delinquency. The delinquency chart, people who are delinquent, and then post 5-day notices, and kind of create a calendar of all the tasks that need done in a given month. But then the forms and process spelled out within the manual on how we do that. She's also working on that for apartment turns and maintenance, like maintenance policies, and so everybody kind of follows that certain process. So it's like McDonald's. I mean, I'm not franchising Pero real estate, but if we add on a maintenance guy, then they know, okay, here's how I handle this type of situation. And look, it's a tough business. I mean, it changes every day. There's 1,000 different things that can go wrong. And just when you think you've seen it all, something new, like some new scenario pops up.
You learn
But
something new every day
yeah,
in this business.
but it's more like, so we got that for both sides of the business, and that's what we're working on. So we do have that system on paper to show how we
Checklist.
handle, right. And then but we have that for the property management is what, so it's like, yeah, that monthly task list, but also how we onboard tenants and how we screen tenants, and then how we store that information. And so they do it consistently. And so I mean, our property managers follow a script, but we let them be themselves too. I mean, the biggest thing is, I don't want them to be a robot. If I
Yeah.
need that, I could hire a VA from halfway across the world to do that. But we want that human element. So we let them put their personality into it, but make sure that they're very very in tune with fair housing, HUD rules, all these things, because you don't want to get
In
say the wrong
trouble.
thing or do the wrong thing. So we just we try to make sure that. And I mean, but again, our most recent property manager, she was a program administrator for HUD prior to coming to work for us. And so again, hiring for mindset, she has the mindset, has the experience of dealing with customers, but also knows the law. We just have to train her on how to lease units and how to sell. But she has the other part of the business there. So that's a huge asset, because she's training our other folks on, like, hey, you can say this, but you can't say that. And here's how we want to market our things, so we're not doing something, inadvertently doing it wrong. Like something as simple as, brand new apartments, great for a young family. Well, you can't say
Yeah.
that, and people don't realize oftentimes that they're giving the appearance of discriminating, even though they're not intending to discriminate. Right. So
Yeah.
that's the thing. So great for a young family with kids. Well, what if it's a same-sex couple with dogs? I mean, but there's testers out there on the market, as you know, that can come in and then just fine your company for saying or doing the wrong thing. So
Well, it goes beyond testers, right? There
yeah.
are also professional scammers
Oh yeah.
that try to trip your leasing agents, and we've had that. We've seen that before. Thank God, not on my property, but on one of our customers, and uh, they sued them, right?
Yeah.
Because somebody tripped, and it's like you said, not intentional. So that's why at least fair housing rules is super
Yeah.
critical to make sure that your team is well versed in and what they can and
100%.
cannot do and what to say. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. So I wanted to touch a little bit. You kind of talked about that in brief about what do you do for your residents,
Yeah.
because in my experience, the number one key in operations is retention.
Yeah.
Because if you don't have good retention, then it's a revolving door and everybody is working harder. The
Yeah.
maintenance guys have to do more make readies, there's more work orders, the leasing agents needs to lease more units, the expenses obviously skyrocket.
Yep.
So what do you guys do for retention?
Yep. So I'll tell you what I do, and I'll also share with you. I one of the challenges with growing so much and self-managing is the retention can get away from you really easily. And so I over the years I became so obsessed with growing my portfolio, and I would just add property and add property without taking care of the tenants that were making me money. And again, I mean, being a nice guy and all that stuff that helps. But I mean, you want people to know that you're responding to their needs in a timely manner. You want people to know that you care and that you're appreciative of their business. So I think that's one of the challenges of growth, is that can get away from you, especially when you're like a solo operator, because you're just focused on growth and not realizing that there's other things you have to tend to your garden too. So what happens then is people will they'll end up like just putting any tenant, they won't screen properly. And so then you're putting bad tenants in somewhere. They're, like you said, then the make readies increase, the maintenance guys workload increases. So it all comes first down to attracting the proper tenant. And so, we try to give a clean, attractive apartment at a price that's not at the high end of the market or the low end of the market. So something that's a very, like, people feel like they're getting a good deal for what we offer. So that we've kind of gotten back to the fundamentals of, giving a high quality product. But as our tenants, run through a life cycle of renting a unit. So year 2 and 3, we're trying to, hey, you re-sign your lease, we'll give them a $10 gift card to the gas station, and do these little giveaways. And they feel like, okay, hey, great, I'm getting something back. And it's only $10, but what if I'm increasing the rent by $20 a month? I mean, that pays for itself over and over again, but it's a little token of our appreciation. We used to do it. I got away from it for about 3 or 4 years, started doing it again last year, but we would give everybody a Christmas card, and, again, just be happy holidays. I mean, we, include everything, but around, December, they all got a Christmas card and a box of chocolate. And there was a point in time where I would get, not offended, but I'd get a little down. I'd see all these boxes of chocolate in the dumpster, but then like we stopped doing it, and people are like, wait, you're not, what happened to the Christmas, the Christmas chocolate? And I'm like, okay, well, so we want to go back and do these little things for tenants to, like, let them know that we care. And, even if it's a card from the company signed by my wife and I think it's important just to have that personal contact. But, we, in terms of retention of tenants, so it's, making sure our maintenance guys and our property managers are professional. They're nice, even to the difficult tenants, the people that can make you have a bad day really quickly. Just, keeping it professional, keeping it positive. We're actually at our recent syndication, we're doing a tenant appreciation night tomorrow, and we're bringing in a couple food trucks, and every tenant's going to get they're going to get a couple coupons and they'll be able to, just to have some food and drinks and hang out. And we'll do that once a year at that complex. And then, but we've invited all of our employees to come, and then we're gonna start doing that, and find the location, but do that for all of our other scattered properties, and just little things like that don't cost a lot, but people feel like, okay, well, my landlord cares. It's a small amount on the bottom line at the end of the year, but I can guarantee you no other property management companies are doing that in town, and I have fun doing it, so. So selfishly, I'll enjoy it. I'll get the free. We have like a grilled cheese food truck and an ice cream food truck. I mean, I'll be fat and happy tomorrow night. So I'm happy. But it's really cool to see the tenant, and it's a chance to just to get to know your tenants a little bit outside of just signing the check or seeing their leases. And so it is a people business, and I enjoy that. That's not for everybody. I know our investors in that syndication, a lot of them don't want that. They don't want anything to do with tenants. So they'll stay far
away.
They're
investors, right?
Right.
No, but you had so many great nuggets in there, and I'm definitely going to get back to this recording and steal some of your ideas to do on our properties.
Yeah.
But I want to touch back and reemphasize something that you said earlier about telling your team how to treat with respect and courteous to the residents. And that's what I like to tell all of our employees is I'm not the one paying your salaries. Yeah. The property manager, if it's a third-party property management, they don't pay your salaries. I don't care what the paycheck says. The people that actually pay your salaries are the guys and girls and families that live in those units.
100%. Yeah.
So you got to treat them with respect. You got to give them a good feeling. And I also, I have a lot of background in the retail world, and I tell them, look, when you walk around on the property and you see trash on the floor, pick it up, right? Clean doesn't cost money. If a resident come across, get your eyes up, right? Smile at them and say, hi, how are you doing today? Or have a great day, or good morning, whatever it is. If you walk into a JCPenney or a Macy's and you walk down the aisle and there's an associate, guaranteed 100%, they will raise their head from whatever they're doing and ask, did you find everything you were looking for today? Yeah. Right? They will acknowledge you and they will offer service. Yep. And that's what we expect our on-site teams to do exactly the same, because it's a different feeling when you leave your apartment and you go to your car and there is a maintenance guy walking with his head in the, looking at the ground, not acknowledging you, versus someone raising their head, looking at you, smiling, and saying, good morning.
Yep. And people are way more receptive when they know you and your team care than if they're just punching a clock or they're just in it for the money. And it's, you just see it time and time again that, like, if you have that, just a positive attitude and inspire that in employees. I mean, it's hard, and it's hard to be positive some days. I mean, do you see how some tenants can ruin a unit and things like that? But you know what, you turn lemons into lemonade, and that's how I try to tell my kids to to look at things. Always look for the positive, the positive spin on something, and look, and we sometimes we've had tenants where they'll test every bit of patience you have. But I always tell my team, I'm like, well, what can we have done differently there? I know this person's a maniac and they're like terrorizing us with, some people, how just some customers can be, but what could we have done differently? Should we have not rented to them, or were we not clear in our expectations of how they communicate with us? Just constant self-assessment so we can get better at, if it's a pain in the butt, well, how do we get better at it so we can remove that pain in the butt in the future, or how do we respond better so a problem doesn't escalate, and things like that.
Yeah, I also like to remind our team that if a tenant comes in screaming or upset, it might have nothing to do with them. Right? Yeah. Because they might be upset because their boss was writing them all day at work, yeah. Right? And they might be upset because something happened in the family, whatever it is, yeah. Right? You got to be a human being on the other side, and it's kind of like, I'm sorry you feel that way. Yeah. Whether the resident is right or wrong with whatever they're complaining about, you should be sorry as a fellow human being that they feel that bad, whatever the reason is. So just because you feel sorry that they feel that bad does not mean you admit to be at fault of anything.
Right. Right.
So I try to remind everybody. I want to be conscious of your time, so I want to kind of switch over to a
Okay.
few rapid questions that we ask most of our guests. Uh, you do value add, right? I know you do syndications, and most of the properties you bought, you found some element to improve. So give us 2, 3 ways that you guys like to do to raise income.
Okay.
We'll talk about expenses in a second. That is not the conventional raise rents or stuff like that.
Sure. So our new acquisition, we've offered a concierge trash service. So there's several buildings on the property, and they're all 3 stories. And so I know a lot of people that they would put their trash on the 3rd story, and then, and again, it's attracting critters or it's just unsightly. So instead of, in the past, we would just post, 5-day notices, and you'd be hitting people with a hammer, and they just wouldn't respond. So I said, well, why don't we think about, just adding that as a service, because, maybe they're not doing it to be disrespectful. Maybe they're just lazy, and maybe they'd be happy to pay an extra $25 a month for this concierge service. But so we offer that up, and we've already got about a dozen people that have taken advantage of it. And again, I know on the scheme of things, that's not a huge income thing, but over the course of time, that's a nice that can be a nice little boost of income.
Well, even if it's not a big boost of income,
yeah.
it could be a retention thing, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So a resident thinking twice, well, if I'll go to that place, there's not going to be the person that's going to pick up my trash, right? And like
exactly.
I said, I'm lazy. I want somebody to take the trash for me. So it could be a retention item as well. What else?
So we also, at our places where we have parking, we'll do a resident of the month. So we'll do a reserved parking spot, and then we'll just kind of randomly like pick my favorites or whatever. But we'll say, hey, resident of the month, and then they get the best parking spot for that month. And that's kind of a nice little, people feel appreciated. So again, it's not a direct like, hey, they're paying extra for that spot, but it goes to the retention aspect of the business. The other thing we do, which helps raise rents, is that when if somebody's been there 5 years or 7 years, say, hey, we'll come in and you pick the color of paint, or you pick this, and we're going to go in and upgrade in your apartment. And then when we're asking for that $50 a month rent increase, but they've just got a brand new backsplash in their kitchen, or they've gotten like a new countertop, and they might be things that we would have changed if they moved, we were going to change it anyhow. So then they're like, oh wow, I'm paying more rent, but it looks like I have a brand new apartment. So they feel better about us asking for more money, and so ultimately it gets us more money, because we haven't we haven't had that
to turn the unit,
turnover cost, right? So yeah, you might go throw in a backsplash, or you might change the light fixtures, but it becomes well, that's a heck of a lot cheaper than having to go through and do everything. So
no, absolutely. Yeah, if you can get away with cleaning the carpet, it's a lot cheaper than having to replace it and turn the unit and do paint and change fixtures and whatever you have to do. If they would have moved that.
Exactly.
Okay, so let's look at the other side. What do you do to get reduce expenses?
Yeah, so on the expense side, I look at expenses every month. So I'll look at my utilities, and so that's one of the biggest drains is utility bills. So even as we've grown so big, I make sure that my financial team is always giving me the rundown of all the bills. And I know which properties, how many residents there are, things like that. And I especially the water bills.
Oh yeah.
We kind of know, per person how much water is going to be utilized. So we have that in our lease, though, that we will charge back for anything above and beyond like normal use. And so we're pretty clear about defining that to residents, what that looks like. So on that side of things, utilities can be just a big like money suck, and if you're not paying attention to it, it gets away from you really fast. So there's utilities. The second side on the like the make readies and the maintenance stuff. So I try to shop around for everything. I mean, whether it's paper towels, like toilet paper holders, toilet seats. We'll look through your Lowe's and Home Depot, but your HD Supply and appliance warehouses and things like that, and just try to chisel down the price where we can, because if you save a nickel here and a dime there, and we'll buy our batteries from Amazon dot
It
com
adds
because
up.
I can get batteries for a third of the cost off of Amazon as opposed to the local hardware store. But when you're changing smoke detectors and things like that on a regular basis, that could be a thousand or 2,000 a year, and that's money out of my pocket. So I really
Uh-huh.
look at the supply side, and then is also on expenses. It comes back to retention, because if I can retain one tenant, what is that make ready going to cost me? Is that going to be a $1,000 turn or a $5,000 turn?
Yeah.
So I've really focused then on how do I run my business. It's not just about buying units and just keeping them full. It's also about reducing that amount of time that we have to spend turning over those units. So attracting and keeping a better quality tenant. And when those higher quality tenants leave, hopefully they leave that unit in better shape. So
Yeah.
I had a few this week, security deposits that are going out this week back in full. And I checked with my property manager to make sure that was accurate. I said, I haven't had like all of them in a month, like in a long time, where they were all a full refund. He said, everybody left it in perfect shape. And I said, that's like music to my ears, because that's less work that we have to do. It always
Yeah.
costs us more money to turn the apartment than it does to give a full deposit back. So that's, I guess, the other thing is educating our tenants. What does a full deposit refund look like? Because they'll get in and they'll scrub that inner part of the stove, and they'll get in and clean all the cracks and crevices in the refrigerator and behind the toilet and all those things that we've got to do to make that
Yeah.
unit, make ready. So,
Okay, great.
yeah.
Um, what would be a good advice for a new operator, right? Somebody that is just getting started in the business.
Yeah. I think, again, whether they're going to be a self-manager or a third-party, operator, whatever it is, find a mentor in the business and find multiple mentors. So I think for me, my career sort of started to snowball when I started working on personal development, working on myself, but also seeking out guys in the business that have been where I want to go. Maybe I was at 100 units and these guys had 200 units, or when I was at 10 units and I saw somebody that had 50, I thought, oh my gosh, like, it was mind blowing to me. So, just finding, searching out friends and mentors, because our industry, for the most part, compared to other industries, has a lot of people willing to help and willing to share
Yeah.
information and ideas. And so, and it doesn't cost any money. I mean, you, I would
This
also encourage
podcast is
people,
a testament for that.
yeah. And so go out, but yeah, listen to podcasts, read the books, but go, even if it's just a local meetup, those are usually very cheap. That's at a minimum. But as the career evolves, or your investing career evolves, spend a little bit of money and go to these conferences and boot camps and things like that, and see what fits, because you may be able to accelerate your career that much more once you kind of get around more people that are doing what you want to do. And so I think that's the biggest thing, just is because it's most of it's mindset. So
Yes.
like we can read it, you and I can talk for 20 minutes and figure out how to underwrite, or teach somebody how to underwrite a deal, but they're only going to learn that through practice, and that comes easy. But what's the mindset of going from 1 unit to 10 units to 100 units to 1,000 units, and things like that? It's just learning how to be a millionaire, not just become a millionaire. So
Yeah, absolutely. That's a phenomenal advice. Um, a little twist on that question. If you could go back in time to a younger Jason, right? And no, you cannot tell yourself that 2009 is the bottom and buy everything you can, right? Other than that, what would you tell yourself?
I would tell myself to relax. I mean, I don't have any regrets. I'm very pleased and grateful for where I'm at right now. I know that, I mean, you can tell yourself different things and you go bigger and whatever. I mean, that's fine. I'm extremely blessed and happy with where I've come from. But I think early on, when I was working my day job, I was so obsessed with money and career and building this business that I feel like that put a strain on my friendships and my marriage, and just wasn't the best version of myself until I stopped caring about that stuff, or I stopped realizing that nobody else cared. I didn't need to prove how good I was to anybody else. It was, and just learning that it's not a competition. Just give it up. And I just was so obsessed. I would work hours and hours and hours in the business. And I think that, if I was a little bit more free and relaxed about it, maybe things would have come a little easier in the early days.
Yeah, well, that's awesome. So I want to thank you for your time. It's been a
Yeah.
phenomenal and a lot of really, really good information. Can you tell our audience where they can find you? If they want to send a referral your way, if they want to reach out, how can they find you?
Sure. So Jason Perro, you can find me on Facebook and LinkedIn. You can put my email in the show notes if you want. That's jasonperro@yahoo.com. And if anybody wants to schedule, a quick 15-minute phone call with me, they can get on my Calendly schedule, which is just Calendly/Jason Perro.
That's very generous of you. Thank you, Jason.
Thank
And
you,
we'll make
Joseph.
sure to put everything in the show notes.
Awesome.
Great. And for you, the audience, if you want to hear more of our podcast, just go and subscribe on iTunes or Stitchers or anywhere else where you consume. We also post all of our videos on YouTube on our channel. And we would really appreciate if you can go online and give us a rating. That helps a lot. Until next time, thank you so much. I'm your host, Joseph Gosline. Thank you so much.